The Southport case has garnered massive media attention, raising many questions and leaving few clear answers. The situation has become even more contentious with the recent restrictions imposed by the government, which have limited discussions on the case. Nigel Farage, leader of Reform UK, made a shocking revelation. MPs from his party have been blocked from publicly addressing the situation in Parliament. Farage says he tried to submit an inquiry to the Interior Secretary, asking if the suspect, Axel Rudakubana, had ever been screened for the Counter-Terrorism Prevent program. However, according to Farage, Parliament authorities denied him the possibility of raising the question, arguing that the case is still in judicial process. This restriction has caused even more concern in public opinion, where the government's silence has encouraged speculation on social networks. Prime Minister Keir Starmer has defended this decision, stressing that politicians must choose to support the work of the police or, failing that, hinder it. In his response to the questions posed, Starmer made it clear that he prefers to support police work, rejecting any attempt to destabilize the process. Farage, however, remains firm in his stance, stating that the Starmer government has been effective in avoiding public discussions that he considers inconvenient. According to him, the country needs clear answers about what happened in Southport. In addition, he denounces that the questions that have arisen about the management of the case cannot be permanently ignored. The case has become even more complex because of the serious charges Rudakubana faces, including possession of dangerous substances, an Al-Qaeda-related document, and murder and attempted murder charges. During his court hearing, the defendant remained silent and with his face covered, which has only intensified the mystery surrounding his case. This issue has sparked a broad debate about transparency in public security issues. Even the independent reviewer of counterterrorism legislation, Jonathan Hall, KC, has pointed out the need for both the government and the police to be more open about criminal cases. According to Hall, the risk of not sharing enough information in traditional media is that other sources on social media end up filling the void with speculation. Farage insists that the lack of concrete information has contributed to a climate of uncertainty that, far from benefiting, harms public trust. In the midst of this atmosphere of secrecy, it is inevitable that the public will look to other sources for answers, which creates a fertile space for theories and speculations. The controversy surrounding the Southport case and the alleged cover-up has tested the government's commitment to transparency. According to Nigel Farage, the fact that Reform UK MPs have been blocked from speaking about Axel Rudakubana in Parliament is an alarming display of censorship in a case of national importance. Farage stressed that citizens deserve to know the details about the security and prevention mechanisms employed in cases of suspected radicalization, especially when they involve acts of violence in the community. However, the current limitations imposed under the justification of not interfering in an active court case have left many wondering whether the decision is really due to legal reasons or if instead it is intended to protect the government from possible criticism. One of the most worrying aspects for Farage and other MPs from his party is the impact that these restrictions can have on public perception. A lack of transparency could undermine citizens' trust in institutions, especially at a time when public security and the fight against terrorism are priorities for society. To complicate matters further, Farage says his attempts to get answers were met with marked nervousness from Parliament authorities. According to him, his colleague Richard Tice was repeatedly warned against avoiding any mention of the case during the Prime Minister's question session. In fact, the issue was dealt with so rigorously that even the President of Parliament himself intervened to remind that the issue should not be touched on in the chamber. This type of exceptional intervention has been seen by some as a measure of preventive censorship. Farage has been quick to point out that this sends a message of intimidation to MPs seeking answers and accuses the government of using fear to silence public debate. In his own words, scare tactics are being used to silence inconvenient topics. The Labour Party's proposed change in inheritance tax has sparked a wave of criticism among farmers and the rural community. The move, which would allow the first £1 million to be transferred tax-free, has raised concerns among those who fear the new scheme will profoundly affect families' ability to maintain their land and agricultural businesses over generations. Darren Jones, the Labour Party's chief secretary to the Treasury, has defended this policy, stating that it is primarily designed to affect large agricultural properties. During an interview, Jones explained that more than half of the inherited tax exemption only benefits a few high-value estates, with an average of around £8 million. Farage For small and medium-sized farms, according to Jones, the impact will be minimal, as most farms will be exempt from this new tax scheme. However, many farmers do not feel comfortable with these words. James Fairley, a seventh-generation farmer, has become one of the most vocal critics of the move, warning that this policy could mark a D-Day for agriculture in the UK. Fairley and other farmers fear the additional tax burden will make it impossible for farms to be passed from one generation to the next, breaking a family tradition and threatening the stability of national food production. Even the president of the National Farmers Union, NFU, Tom Bradshaw, has joined the criticism, stating that this policy represents a severe blow to farming families who have farmed the land for centuries. According to Bradshaw, this measure could have an effect on food prices, reducing the country's ability to produce local food and increasing the country's dependence on imported products. Some experts believe that farmers' fears may be overblown. Analyses by the Center for Taxation Analysis suggest that only a few properties are actually affected by the inheritance exemption on agricultural properties. Aaron Advani, professor of economics at the University of Warwick, highlighted that in fact many farming families have ways to mitigate tax impacts through other benefits, especially if they are properties shared between married couples, which can grant up to £2 million in exemptions. Despite these arguments, discontent continues to grow among the farming community. Bizer Walters, a 26-year-old farmer, said she could be forced to sell some of her land to pay taxes if one of her relatives were to die, jeopardizing the family legacy and the continuity of her operations. The political opposition has not been long in coming. Conservatives have criticized the reform, calling it a frontal attack on farmers, in the words of MP Greg Smith. Even the Liberal Democrats have voiced their rejection, worried that Labour's tax policies could end up affecting almost half of the farms in the UK. The National Farmers Union has announced a protest in London to express its rejection of these changes to inheritance tax, a move that James Fairley said is unusual for the organization. According to him, the fact that the NFU has called for a march shows the seriousness with which the agricultural community perceives this situation. The march in London is shaping up to be a significant event, uniting farmers from all parts of the country in an unprecedented demonstration. Amid this landscape of uncertainty, the Labour Party is facing increasing pressure to reconsider its approach, or at least provide more clarity on the real impact of this policy. At a time when the cost of living is a national concern and food security is a priority, the debate on fiscal policy and its impact on agriculture has become a central issue on the public agenda. Tensions continue to rise, and as farmers prepare to take their fight to the streets, the Labour Party is under intensive scrutiny to show that its reforms will not jeopardize the future of agriculture in the UK or the country's access to locally produced food. As the protest in London approaches, the pressure on the Labour Party is not only coming from farmers, but also from citizens who fear rising food prices and increased reliance on imported goods. The NFU and other agricultural groups have made it clear that if the reform is not adjusted, the impact on farming families and national production could be irreversible, affecting the rural economy and access to local products. The Labour Party, for its part, has reiterated that its changes to the inheritance tax seek greater fairness in taxation, with no intention of harming small and medium-sized farmers. However, as tensions grow and protest is organized, it remains to be seen whether the government will take any further steps to address these concerns or whether it will maintain its position in defense of a reform that they say will mainly affect the wealthy and not the pillars of local agriculture.